of Indian cinema, Ardeshir Irani. I think if you ask me as a trivia question, who made Alam Ara, I would say Ardeshir Irani, and that was it. So I'm here, like most of us here are, to get to know him a little better through our expert, Dr. Panjwani. May I welcome Dr. Panjwani here, please.
Is not everyone seems to have heard of Alam Ara, but that's it. The story of Ardeshir Irani in the popular imagination begins and ends with Alam Ara. I thought, I feel that since he's actually much more than just some guy, some old guy who made Alam Ara and then died. That's it. And it was the first talkie film. There's a little more to him. I'm by no means an expert on Ardeshir Irani, but I have spent some time researching his life. So I thought I would share with you a few stories and the issues around his life. And there are some important issues. The first thing I would like to tell you is that we have to travel back in time into the 1910s and 1920s before we even come to Alam Ara, which was in 1931. Take yourself back for a moment to an evening in late November 1929 at the Excelsior Theatre, roughly where the Excelsior Theatre still is. And it's a preview of a Hollywood film called Showboat. And it's a preview for film producers and film directors only, local film producers and directors. At this moment in time, the only cinema is silent cinema. And then they sit down to watch Showboat, and it's a shock. It talks, it sings, and there are no singers. Normally in silent films, there was a kind of lower stall below the screen where the singers would be positioned and they would sing as per the scene. But here the sound is coming from within the screen itself. They're completely shocked. How can it be? And yet there it is. The film is short, just about 45 minutes long. When it gets over, they're very worried, more worried now than they were before. Because just 2 years earlier, in 1926-27, the Hollywood silent film, Thief of Baghdad, was found to be the greatest silent hit in the whole country. Everybody from north to south, east to west wanted to see The Thief of Baghdad. Not Indian films, but this Hollywood film. And our directors, who often would copy these Hollywood films, were totally stumped because the technology which they had was the superior to ours at that time. So then the issue became, after they came out of the hall, they said, we've got to do something. Now they've got, first they had technically superior films which were silent like ours. And now they've got a talking film. So unless we do something, we'll be wiped out completely. Ardeshir Irani was in the audience. He didn't talk very much to anyone. He just went home. And the next morning, he was accompanied by his partner, a partner called Abdul Ali Yusuf Ali. And this is something I want to correct here, that the credit for making the first talkie film is given only to Ardeshir Irani, and this is wrong, it is unfair. Abdul Ali Yusuf Ali was as much involved in the making of Alam Ara and in the distribution of it as Irani. So anyway, Abdul Ali is his munshi, his financial manager, and his partner. They meet the next day, and Irani tells Abdul Ali that what we saw was a 40% talking film. Only the songs could be heard, and a few stray dialogues. But 60% of it was silent, 40% of it was a talkie. He said, I am now going to make 100% talkie. I don't know how, you don't know how, but we are going to make 100% talkie. So he said to Abdul, do we have the money for it? Abdul said, no, we don't have the money at the moment, but a year down the line, if our existing silent films do well, and if we manage our production costs better, then maybe we will have. So let's get down to our silent films and start saving the money. And they did. Now, we've sort of come into the middle of Ardeshir's life. He's 42, 43 years old at this time. What has he been doing before? After this, he makes Alam Ara, we know. We'll come to that, how that happens. There's a very important role of a parrot in that making of Alam Ara, but let's leave that for a moment. Let's just go back to who Irani is. Where does his life begin? That is the biggest unknown so far. Whenever I looked around and tried to research the story of Ardeshir Irani, I was faced with two problems. One, that Alam Ara did not exist. The print of Alam Ara does not exist. It has been pronounced by the British Film Archive also as one of the great lost films. There is no way anyone seems to have it. The other was that nothing almost is known about Ardeshir the man. So I have done some research, and it is of course well known that he was born in December 1886, a little before Jawaharlal Nehru, who was born in 1889. He was born in 1886. There is a dispute about where he was born. I won't get into that. To the best of my knowledge, he was born in Bombay. His grandson apparently thinks that he was born in Pune, and some other people also think he was born in Pune. Let it be, doesn't matter. The point is, he's here in Bombay. He's entering a school which exists, fortunately, even today. And we look at that school. He's 7, 8, 9 years old. information is very sparse on it was set up in 1873. He got admission in class 3 in 1897. And he finished his matric. Matric in those days meant 7th standard. So 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. 5 years he studied here. I met one of the senior trustees of this school, and she dug out for me the admissions register from that time. And his name is indeed there. There are no parents mentioned. There's an uncle. I asked her why. I don't know. My guess is that his parents had passed away very early on in his life. So here is Ardeshir getting admission in class 3, passing out in 1904 from J.J. Fort Boys High School. You can see the bus, actually it says J.J. B.D. Is it J.J. Sir J.J. Benevolent Institution, something like that. So that's its name. Anyway. Paris, yeah, okay. Whatever it is, it looks in pretty good shape even today. Upon his matriculation in 1903, he topped the class in both the languages he studied there, Persian and English. He also showed himself to have a talent for music, especially in playing the school's piano. After his matriculation, he asked the school principal for a job, any job, to survive. Looking at his language skills, Ardeshir was hired as a temporary teacher of Persian in the J.J. Boys School, from which he had just graduated. He was 17 years old and didn't know what to do with himself. His parents had passed away. He was now an educated orphan. I'm trying to take you back to the time, what the city was like in those early years of the 20th century, 1903, 1907, 1910. There were no pakka roads. This is one of those metal roads. And what you see there in the middle is a horse-drawn tram, the one with the white canopy in the middle of the road. And here is a close-up of another horse-drawn tram. So he did various odd jobs, taking whatever came his way. The school teaching job was not a very high-paying one. The other job he got 2 years or so later was as a kerosene inspector with the police. That job involved ensuring that the kerosene cans being sent to the suburbs or to other towns beyond Bombay were not diluted with water. Why did Ardeshir get this part-time police officer's job? I don't know. But the likely reason may be that he was a Parsi school teacher. A Parsi school teacher, which was proof enough of his honesty and reliability. Such was the brand value that the Parsi community had acquired in the eyes of the British Raj by the end of the 19th century. Horses, trains and ships. Horses, long-distance trains, and ships, dominated the city scene in Bombay at that time. Parsi theatre was still very much active. Cinema had not yet been born. The first Indian film was made by Dadasaheb Phalke in 1913. But even before Phalke made his first film, many Europeans, Frenchmen, Britishers had started showing small films in tents in the Azad Maidan and the Oval Maidan areas. It was common to be able to go to a tent and see a film there. Around that time, that is 1908, 1909, one of the tent keepers was Abdul Ali Yusuf Ali. But he and Ardeshir had not yet met. So there was Parsi theatre, and Parsi theatre evolving. So Parsi theatre begins around 1853. We are now talking of 1907, by which time Parsi theatre is involved significantly, and now the main language in which Parsi theatre plays are enacted is Hindustani. They called it Hindustani. It was a simplified form of Urdu. The Gujarati-speaking Parsi audience originally had reacted very strongly, saying, "What is this Urdu? Why are you bringing in Urdu?" But gradually they began to accept it and like it. And by the early 20th century, Urdu was Urdu was too difficult. So what the script writers of these plays in Parsi theatre did was to simplify that Urdu, mix it with 30% Hindi, 10% Gujarati, 10% Marathi, and made it a mixed hybrid language. And that hybrid language was Hindustani. This is the period 1905 to 1914. Now, there's something interesting which happens. Let's just see. Sorry, the cursor. So, young Ardeshir finished his matriculation. He was 17 years old, and he did various odd jobs. Kerosene inspector, school teacher, this, that, and the other. Now, okay, this is Apollo Bandar. This is just to take you into that period. This is Apollo Bandar, circa 1910. The Gateway of India does not exist. This is that gateway area before the gateway came into existence. The gateway comes into existence in 1924. This is 1910. So beautiful, clean vista, somewhat like Marine Drive. This was the Marine Drive of that time. And this is because the city of Bombay at that time was east facing. Everything was in the east. The Taj Mahal Hotel was in the east. Apollo Bandar was in the east. Most of Colaba's interesting places were in the east. Marine Drive did not exist. The reclamation of land on the western side had not yet taken place. So it was an east-facing city, looking at the bay, looking at ships, and the ships were all important. Everything, all the trade was done with the ships. The wealthy people traveled in Victorias. The not so wealthy traveled in bullock carts. This is just another morning scene near the Apollo Bandar. Oh. Okay. One thing Ardeshir used to do regularly after getting his first salary from school was to buy a 1 anna lottery ticket every day. Like thousands of other anonymous souls in this big city, Ardeshir wanted to try his luck. You never know when Dame Fortune smiles. And then 5 years later, in 1909, his ticket won the lottery. I don't know why it is. I'm crying as I think of. The prize was 14,000 rupees, a very big sum at that time. And what did he do with this big prize? He rented an empty warehouse on Kalba Devi and revamped it into a music store. A store for both selling and hiring musical instruments. This was a truly big decision. It would completely transform his life. The year is 1909-1910. He wins the lottery, he rents this place, he sets up and buys musical instruments and starts his business. Probably stops teaching in the school, probably continues with his kerosene inspection. We don't know. There is no documentation of any kind of what he was doing. Now, he had musical proclivities, as I told you, which his teachers had noticed in school. He had now music. The time at which this music store came was a very interesting time. It was the time when the first records, long playing records as we call them, had come into the market. It was the time when you had these hand-driven gramophones. That is the time, 1910, sorry. So the first records, the first gramophones, and his granddaughter, Zareen, told me that he would keep one gramophone at the door and play. And it would attract people, where is the sound coming from? And there were now, fortunately by this time, Indian women who had begun to sing. Gohar Jaan is the most famous of them. Here is I'm sorry, this date is wrong. It should be 1910, and some mistake, my mistake. But these 4 years, between 1910 to 1914, are a time when he does roaring business. He does roaring business because Parsi theatre, the people from Parsi theatre are frequently in need of musical instruments. Because every play of theirs requires music. It is music and dance. And often the instruments break, run out, break down, whatever. So they would come to him as to go to other stores too, to hire the instruments. One of the instruments, which is shown here in the picture, the drum. So he didn't have a piano in the store. It was too expensive. But he had harmoniums, mouth organs, violins, and drums. Apparently, what he used to do was to just play the drum for himself when he was on his own. Because running a store, for anyone who's actually done it, it's something like a 15, 16-hour job. You have to be there. You have to be available for the customer whenever he comes. He was single at this time. So please don't take 1919, take 1910. He was single at this time. When the store began to do well, and began to do very well, because of the renting rather than the sale, that's when he planned and did get married. We don't know when. There's so many unknowns. Sometime between 1910 and 1915, he got married. I don't know his wife's name. This is the state of knowledge. Okay. His granddaughter happens to be here. So please tell us. Banu. Okay. There we are. So that's added a little. Anyway, this 4-year stint in the store leads to, we are now into 1914. He's become a successful music store businessman. There's an auction of a theatre called Alexandra, which is located in Lohar Chawl, of all places. At that time, Lohar Chawl was very different from what it is now. The theatre was owned by an Englishman. The Englishman was going to join the war. The First World War was about to begin, and he wanted to sell off his theatre. So there was an auction. He happened to go for the auction, and guess whom he meets at the auction? A Bohri businessman. He doesn't know who he is. His name is Abdul Ali Yusuf Ali, who also comes because he's already in the film business. He's been running these rented bioscope shows for some years now. Unlike Ardeshir, who had nothing to do with film. Ardeshir's involvement grows in Parsi theatre. So he makes friends with people in Parsi theatre. He's often invited for shows, etc., etc. But here he meets this guy, and neither of them has enough money to clinch the deal. So they join up, and they say, why don't we just do it 50-50? And they do that. So they get the lease to Alexandra Theatre. They become partners, and the war begins. But the films go on. Now this theatre is mainly for showing British, European, French, Italian films. The language doesn't matter because it's all silent. We are still very much in the silent era. So they do well in Alexandra Theatre through the war. The war ends. The British government announces that Lohar Chawl will now not be a place of mixed business. It will only be a Lohar Chawl. It will only be a metal market. And everything else has to move out. And they are now developing a new area called Baikala. And those who wish to can move to Baikala. And they will get some, because after all there's a lot of costs in breaking down a theatre and setting up the same thing. So Alexandra shifted to Baikala. And in 1920, now 1918, the World War ends. 1919-20 is when the transition happens to Baikala. I'll show you where the theatre was that later. It was like the edge of Baikala and Nagpada. Alexandra Theatre. At the same time, so while they've made money from the music store they have made money from the theatre, he has made money from the music store as well. Then they hear that there is another piece of land going in Girgaon. This is the year 1919. They say, let's set up another theatre. These theatres are good. So in 1921, another theatre jointly owned by Abdul Ali and Ardeshir called Majestic in the Girgaon area comes up. And it's an even bigger success. It's a bigger theatre than Alexandra and has a larger population. It's part of what is called native town in those days. So there are two theatres. Now suddenly look at this. This man who was a school teacher, part-time, temporary, after this lottery and the music store, now owns two theatres, two cinema halls. And apparently, and this is, I got to know from Yusuf Ali's son, who has now passed away, but he was alive at that time when I was interviewing. He said they spent huge amounts of time just watching films. See, the war was on, so there wasn't much to do. So they would spend at least 4 or 5 hours a day watching movies, one after. And the movies were there in their, and Hollywood movies by this time, European movies were in the process of being displaced by Hollywood. They were really cheap. As much, just the equivalent of $25, $30, you could get a Hollywood movie to screen. Then you screen and, return it when it's done. So they are making money and they are soaking themselves in cinema. Alexandra was essentially a theatre for European films. So now you've got these two guys who suddenly become, film maestros and thinking, why don't we make films? They seem simple enough to make. Why don't we make films? We've got the money. So in 1922, now the partnership is split as Ardeshir as the creative director, producer, scriptwriter, though the script writing would often be done by others, and Yusuf Ali as the Munshi, the manager. So he makes this film Veer Abhimanyu in the year 1922. Veer Abhimanyu is a story from the Mahabharata, as we all know. It does moderately well, nothing much to speak of. But in 1924, now there's some strange things happening. The kind of rumblings of nationalism, which are happening all around in the city. There is the Hindu-Muslim polarization, which is also happening. In this situation, in 1924, Ardeshir Irani and Naval Gandhi is the co-director of this film. Somebody, I don't know where he comes from, but there's a kind of fraternity of filmwalas floating around. He finds Naval Gandhi, they make this film called Razia Begum. Now, Razia Begum is a queen going back into the 9th century or something, very, very far back. They make her, she is the queen of, what would it be called? The Delhi area, the Delhi-Agra area. She is shown as falling in love with a Hindu slave who is in her employ. And the film is being shown in various parts of India. In Hyderabad, when the Muslims of Hyderabad see this film of Razia Begum falling in love with a Hindu slave, there's a huge uproar. The Nizam hears of it. He has the screening done for him. And he throws out the distributor lock, stock and barrel. How dare you show a Muslim queen falling in love with a Hindu slave? A huge controversy. The film distributor is thrown away. the film screening is stopped. But nothing happens in Bombay. In Bombay, which is a little more cosmopolitan than Hyderabad, the film continues to be shown. No great ruffles, and there must have been some, of course, but nothing to compel Ardeshir's Razia Begum from being shown. So 1924, this is one of his significant. Now he is getting into he's beginning to like the business, the controversy, the attention, the money which comes with making a film which does well at the box office. And he makes a series of, now, as I said, there's this Hindu-Muslim factor in the underground. In what form is it there? It's there in the form of Hindi for Hindus and Urdu for Muslims. No Hindustani. Now, it doesn't matter because these are silent films. Please remember. But there are, all the way from Allahabad and Banaras, there are rumblings of the Hindi versus Urdu war which has begun. In 1916, the Banaras Hindu University is set up. In 1920, the Aligarh Muslim University is set up. Banaras is in the east, Aligarh is in the west. And this is all happening outside Bombay. Bombay is in its own spin, as it always has been. Much more into trade and textile mills and movies and things like that. Ships. I'm sure the sea air also contributes in some way to giving us a cooler temperament. I don't know. But nothing much happens with Razia Begum here. It does well. He now makes, Ardeshir begins to make films which are socially, there's a social reform movement set off by Gandhiji and Congress and everybody. So he makes women-centered films. And he's not the first one to make it. There's another studio called Ranjit Studios who makes a film called Telephone Ki Taurani. Telephone Ki Taurani simply means telephone operator, a receptionist. And she is the center, and the story is about her, a woman telephone operator. The first time that a silent film is centered around the life story of one woman. It creates a bit of a stir in the industry. Ardeshir lifts up the actress who has played the role and gives her a series of roles. Now by this time, that's right. Another thing which has happened with all the money which they want, he set up the Imperial Film Company, a studio, a big studio which existed until recently. It's now just gone to the dogs. But it's there at the bottom of Kennedy Bridge. You'll see the address of the studio and I'll show you a picture of Alamara. But what has happened now is that he owns a studio, he's making films, silent films, and he's not comfortable making these Hindu mythological films. He's made one Veer Abhimanyu, and that's it. He tends to make films based on the Arabian Nights. So he makes Sinbad the Sailor, he makes Ali Baba. Then he makes a film called The Wild Cat of Bombay. This is The Wild Cat of Bombay in the year 1927. The Wild Cat of Bombay has the same woman. Her name is Ruby Myers. Ruby Myers was a Jew. Her screen name had to be changed because people, see, she looked semi-Western. She had brown hair, she had light eyes, fairer skin than most other Indian actresses. And she was just far more self-confident and smart. In fact, some of the other studios, she was like a hot property. So some other studios had already started making her the sex symbol of silent cinema, Indian cinema, whatever. But he calls her and he says, this Wildcat of Bombay story, you have to play 8 roles, not just one. 8 roles, which are all the disguises that you must have in order to be the Wildcat. Nobody must know who is the Wildcat. You are like the secret savior, the little Spider-Man kind of character who will come and rescue people in distress. But who you are otherwise is not like, you're Clark Kent and you work in, no. You are 8 different people. So he tells Ruby Myers that, are you willing to take this role on? And she says yes. And she does it, and the film is a stupendous success. Wildcat of Bombay brings in lots of revenue for Imperial Studios. So encouraged by this, he then makes a film called Indira B.A. This is the first time that you have a film about a woman who not only does her matriculation, but goes on to go to college and gets a job. These are all big things in those days. The Indira B.A. is made in 1928-29, and it was still a very, very big issue that a woman should have a job of her own, and that she earns enough to run the household, etc. So Indira B.A. was a character, and Ruby Myers played that role, and she did a very comfortable, good job of it. So this is Ardeshir Irani. This is the time when he sees that Showboat Hollywood film, having made Wildcat of Bombay, having made Indira B.A., having made good money from it. And the final film that he makes, which finally Yusuf Bhai says, okay, now you can place your order. The final film is Sinbad the Sailor. He had made Sinbad earlier, he makes another version. And that's a stupendous success. Another little success is a film called Cinema Girl. But you see, the silent film studio, actors are employed on a weekly basis, monthly basis. Let me tell you one incident. Mehboob Khan, the man who set up Mehboob Studios in Bandra, who made Mother India the film and various other films. Mehboob Khan was an extra in Imperial Studios. Just an extra. There's a film called Shirin Khusru. God knows where he gets his titles, but Shirin Khusru, silent film. The year is 1929. Shooting is taking place in some palace ground. There are some Maharajas who are happy to give their vast grounds for film people. Come and do your shooting. So shooting is taking place, and there's a scene which requires the hero to be on a horse which goes berserk and runs very, very fast. And the camera is positioned at the end of the horse's run. So the director goes around, there's a crowd of extras, let's say about 30, 40 of them, and asks, hey, who will do it? Who will, it's a very risky thing, and you might just fall off the horse and die. A big, wild-looking horse. Mehboob Khan says, I'll do it. he gets on and he does it. He does it so much that the horse goes completely out of control. It comes within inches of the camera and then stops. The director says, cut. He brings the film back to Ardeshir at Imperial Studios, shows it to him, and they are stunned. It's never been the case that you've had a horse literally within touching distance of the camera. Who is this guy? Ardeshir asks. अपना एक्स्ट्रा वो महबूब कौन महबूब कहते वो don't you remember that railway guard he brought this fellow कि भाई please उसको कुछ काम दे दो some years ago हाँ अच्छा call him Mehboob Khan is called says so you did a good job how much do you earn it's 30 rupees a month from today your salary is gone up to 50 rupees a month and it's and Mehboob Khan this is not told to me by Irani or anybody connected. It's in Mehboob Khan's biography. In the biography of Mehboob Khan is this story that the most important event in his life as a filmmaker early on was this, that he was acknowledged by Khan Sahab. He was known as Khan Bahadur Ardeshir Irani. Khan Bahadur was a kind of title given by the British for those who were not given the title Sir. See, to be given the title Sir was to be knighted. That was not, they didn't do that. That to be knighted, you had to go to England. The Queen would put her sword over your head, etc. But he was given the title Khan Bahadur Ardeshir Irani. The name of the Kennedy Bridge under which Jyoti Studios was situated was made into Khan Bahadur Irani Bridge. For a while, I don't know whether it is. All these things are long ago. Okay, coming back now. So I now have given you some idea of what all happened in his life before Alam Ara. Now, this is the last issue, really. Yeah, this is a picture of the two partners, Abdul Ali and Irani, outside Imperial Studios. Imperial Studios had a big gate. Prithviraj Kapoor spent months just hanging around the gate, not being allowed in. The watchman was the god, you see. He would decide who would be allowed into the studio to meet Khan Sahab. And it wasn't easy to get it, for this to happen. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that it is often said that, wrongly said, that Ardeshir Irani went to London or New York, learned about the talking movie camera, and then bought it and came back. No. To the best of my knowledge, Ardeshir Irani never left Bombay. He might have gone nearby, to Lonavala or something, but never left Bombay, at least in his active years. He was here. What did he do? He saw an ad for a talking movie camera and projector in a trade magazine. He sent a postcard placing an order for the camera. This is an early June 1930. By the end of September 1930, the movie camera, the projector, the recording machines, all of it arrive. They come in huge crates, and comes with them an American engineer called Wilford Deming, sent with compliments by the company, saying, you don't know how to operate this machine. So it's not just good, it's not enough to just have the machine. How will you operate it? Our man will show you. So Wilford Deming introduces himself and begins to unpack, show the machines. And just to show how this movie camera operates, everybody in the studio is asked to come and test their voice. So all the extras, Ardeshir himself, actors, etc. Even Ardeshir's parrot, he had a pet at that time. His parrot. So the parrot speaks and is recorded. Everyone's convinced that this is a magic machine. We are going to go ahead and use it. And Wilford Saab will show us how to do it. But Wilford Saab is expensive. His charges were 100 rupees a day. Now 100 rupees a day remember, Mehboob Khan was on 30 rupees a month. This is 100 rupees a day. Huh? So he said, look, I've come, these are my charges. So Ardeshir said, acha, theek hai. We have no choice. So for the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you teach me and the one younger person with him, teach the two of us how to operate this machine. And then we'll have to say goodbye to you. And that's what they do. They own the machine, they learn how to operate it, and they say goodbye to Wilford Deming. Meanwhile, in Calcutta, now, there is the Calcutta angle, there is the other big Parsi filmmaker, Jahangir Madan. Jahangir Madan is much bigger than Ardeshir, etc. He owns that in the 1920s, some 300 cinema halls all over India. He's huge. He's become huge partly because J.J. Madan is the son, the Fremji Madan, the father, was the one who set up Parsi Theatre and set up. There is in fact a street in Kolkata even today called Madan Street after Fremji Madan. Anyway, so J.J. Madan has Wilford Deming brought over to Calcutta. He says, I believe you are looking for a job, come over. And there are other Calcutta silent film wallahs. Now there is a competition going on between J.J. Madan and Ardeshir Irani. They don't know it. At least Ardeshir doesn't know it. He has vaguely heard of Madan. Madan has vaguely heard of Ardeshir, but they're 1,000 miles apart. So anyway, Madan has been to New York. He has seen, in fact, the first silent film made in November 1927 in New York called The Jazz Singer has been seen by Madan, not by anybody else here. Madan owns cinema halls in Bombay. The Excelsior Cinema Hall where they see Showboat is owned by Madan. So anyway, there's a competition now between Madan and Irani in the period between September 1930 and March 31. September 1930 to March 31. And the question which is, Madan has also got the equipment, by the way. He's already got the equipment also. The question that Madan is unable to resolve is, what language? See, this whole issue of going from silent to talkie there were two factors. One was that the entire cinema hall would have to be redesigned. You would have to make it, the acoustics would have to be changed. You'd have to install huge speakers which would pick up the sound and magnify it from the screen, which was never the case. You had live music with silent films. Now you've got projected music with sound coming from the screen. So the whole, in November 29, when they saw the film, this talkie film, they were saying, yeah, we can't do it. And who's going to give us, where are the talkie halls? Kaun karega? Who will undertake this expenditure? There was debate about whether we should go into talkies at all. Dadasaheb Phalke said, silent cinema is an art form. Talkies are a corruption. Charlie Chaplin wrote an article in the New York Times saying, bah, nahi chalega talkie films. So we need a universal language for great art, and silent cinema is a universal language. The moment you introduce talkie films, you will have language issues. What language? And indeed, that is correct. So the debate in Bombay and in Bengal, Calcutta, was what language? What language should your talkie be in? Madan is not sure, so he begins to make his first film in Bengali. Now, if you live in Kolkata, even today or even 100 years ago, Bengali is like you're bathed in Bengali. You can't, it's like the river is Bengal and you're just swimming in it. You can't think of doing anything in non-Bengali. So poor fellow, though he's a Parsi, he says, "Acha, theek hai, we'll make the first film in Bengali." In Bombay, however, there's a controversy. There are the Gujus, there are the Maharashtrians, and then there are the Hindi speakers. The Hindi speakers are a very small minority. And then there are, all kinds of other ethnic groups. There are Englishmen, there are Jews, there are people from Armenia and Ukraine. And thanks to the port, there was a fairly diverse, plural linguistic situation then and now. What language? So one of the studios called Kohinoor Studios begins to make a series of what they call a review, which is short films in 3 languages. So there are 2 films in Hindi, not in Hindi, 2 films in Gujarati, 2 films in Marathi, 2 films in English. About 5-minute films. In all this confusion of what film to make, what language to choose, Ardeshir has no doubt in his mind. He has decided from day one that his film will be in Hindustani. Hindustani is what he's grown up with, you see. And he likes Farsi. His mother tongue is Farsi. He's like a 2nd generation migrant from Iran. His parents came from Yazd around 1870. He's born in 1886. So there is Farsi, and then there is Gujarati, which is also picked up. So he has no problem thinking, and Parsi theatre, where he has seen Hindustani all the time. So he says, I choose Hindustani because it is the language of the people. Simple. No, Gujarati kya hai, Marathi kya hai, nothing. Hindustani. Because he was so clear, and he went ahead and made Alam Ara. When Alam Ara was released, finally, made on the 14th of March 1931, there was a riot. People just went crazy because they were seeing a Hindustani talking Indian film. and 100% talkie. There were songs, there were dances, there was dialogue and everything. So simple Arabian Nights tale, the film was called Alam Ara. I'll just show you. Sorry. This was one of the ads for the film. Zubaida was the heroine, Master Vitthal was the hero. Prithviraj Kapoor had a small role in it too. He made it real. Yeah, he did. One day he did. And this is, now if you look at it, I wish it could be blown up. What it says is, all talking, singing, dancing, Alam Ara, Imperial Movie Tone, Kennedy Bridge, Bombay. That's the text. All talking, singing, dancing, Alam Ara. Many people ask, what is Alam Ara? What does it mean? So I've just used an image. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What does Alam Ara mean? This picture is the answer. I must admit to you that this is not Zubaida. This is a picture from that period, a picture taken in 1934 of a princess. I just used it because I found it as an illustration of what the title means. The title means the ornament of the world, the light of the world. So I thought this was as close an image I could find. But the woman is the Princess Param of Kapurthala, who happened to be in Bombay somewhere around Irani's studio, and this picture was taken. This is Ardeshir at work, probably looking at the film's Alam Ara, excerpts of the film Alam Ara. Now, yeah, this is a quote that I like. One language sets you in a corridor for life. Two languages open every door along the way. Now, this is my last point. Frank Smith, who wrote this line, was a British psycholinguist, and he wrote this. And what is odd about this whole issue of what language? You see, after Alam Ara's release, over the next 5 years, between 1931 to 1935, okay, including the year 31, 94 talking films were made. 94 talking films in 5 years, which is not much. We make about 500 films a year now. 94 films in 4 years, talking films, and over 100 silent films. Silent cinema continued to continue till 1935. There were people who were not willing to, who didn't have the resources to make talkie films. Anyway, so of the 94 talkie films which were made, 85 were in Hindustani. 85 of the 94 talkie films were in Hindustani. And that is what is the foundation of the Hindi film industry. The Hindi film industry came into being as a Hindi film industry because 85 of the 94 films made by a whole battery of filmmakers, including Madan, who made his first Bengali film and it flopped. The next film he made was called Shiri Farhad. And there's a very interesting story about Shiri Farhad, which I would like to leave you with. Shiri Farhad, this now March 14, 1931 is Alam Ara. April 11th, 1931 is Jamai Shastri, the Bengali film. So he's beaten Madan already by a month. Madan has now realized that the only way to survive, the only way to do well, is to make films in Hindustan. So he hires the biggest professional nautch girl of Calcutta called Jahanara Kajjan. Kajjan Bai she was known as. And a singer, a male singer who's also very famous, Nisar something. So Nisar and Kajjan are hired to play the roles of Shiri and Farhad. Shiri Farhad is a story like Romeo and Juliet, grand, with everybody dying in the end, etc. Anyway, now what happens in Bombay? The film Shiri Farhad is completed in June. March is gone, April is gone, May is gone, it comes to June. In June, in the middle of June, it finally comes to Bombay. It's showing in Calcutta. And it does extremely well. Alam Ara was a box office hit, 4 shows a day for 8 weeks. 4 shows a day, 8 weeks, riots in the streets, everything. But finally, everybody who could afford to had seen it in Bombay. It then went to other areas, it went to Lucknow, Jaipur, etc. And in a sense, it's like Abdul Ali ensured that the money kept rolling in. He was the distributor. But Shiri Farhad. Shiri Farhad is far better in terms of production values, in terms of acting capabilities, and in terms of singing. Jahanara Kajjan is a very, very good singer. You can even hear her on the YouTube today. She doesn't live, etc., but her songs are still there. The film was so, and it had 16 songs. Alam Ara had 7 songs. This one had 16 songs. Beautifully sung, beautifully recorded. People went crazy. Now, the story is here. Bori women, the Bori women of South Bombay, somewhere in the Dongri area, get together. They are not allowed to see the film. Women are not allowed to go and see films at all. If they do, then they can see religious films. But not this. Not Shiri Farhad. So what do? They team up, they talk to each other, and they go to the Wellington Theatre is where it's running, nearest to them. It's running in various theatres, but Wellington is the one. Wellington is very close to where Metro is, in the Dhobi Talao area. Wellington is also, most theatres are owned by Parsis. So Wellington is where this film is running. They go to the Parsi owner, some of these women, and they say, ki dekho, we are going to come, 110 of us, your theatre can accommodate 110 or 120 people. 110 of us will come. We are prepared to give you the money now. But on that day, is there a problem? On that day, none of our men, no man is to be allowed. It's a women's show. And they've chosen the day as Saturday. probably calculating that that is the day when the men are away in their shops, etc. Everything is going fine, the tickets have been bought, all the 110 women know this is the time they have to leave, this is the time they have to come to the theatre. But somewhere, some husband gets to know. They get to know, and the word spreads among the husbands, कि ये क्या कर रही है? So they band together. Now, this is like they come to know about 2-3 hours before the event that this is going to happen. Meanwhile, the women are pretending as though nothing is happening. They're not talking. Anyway, the women land up. The film show begins. And by this time, the men have mobilized enough of them. And they land up at the theatre. And then they tell the manager, this is a love story. और तुम हमारी औरतों को दिखा रहे हो पागल है क्या? There is absolutely no way that a good Bori woman can see a love story. We will not allow it. The Parsi owner says, Baba, we bought the tickets, the show has begun, and you can't go in. And that's right. When he sees the men assembling, he calls the police. So the police have come and they are there. But for the next 45 minutes or more, and the number of men keeps growing. The more the word gets around, your wife is also there, your daughter is also there. It's like a calamity. It's like a tsunami has hit the Bori community. They've all woken up कि हमारी लड़कियों को ही दिखा रहे हैं. Anyway, they try, there's a little riot at the theatre with these men wanting to force their way in. Some of the women, frightened about what will be the consequences, sneak out and go home. Baba, they tell their fellow women, I won't be able to handle, you don't know what my man is like, etc. But the majority of women stay, the show goes on, and the next day the Times of India has a big report, which is where I'm quoting from. And this happened with Shirin Farhad, whose popularity, the film ran in Bombay for about 5 months. So one of the most successful early talkie films which happened. In short, Hindustani, once it came to be accepted as the medium, and then it was the success of Shirin Farhad was proof enough to all the other producers that if you want to make a film, make it in Hindustani. Now, what puzzles me, and this is the question I want to leave you with, surely with the 75 years of Parsi theatre, which precedes the coming of cinema, and especially talkie cinema, everybody in Bombay should have known that Hindustani works. But they said, we don't know what language. And you have this one guy from a minority community. Parsis then comprise 6% of the city's population, who says, I'll make it in Hindustani, and it works. How? Why is it that only this man, he's not the only one to have seen Parsi theatre? And the answer lies in the fact that most of the producers were Hindus. Most of the studio owners were Hindus. They didn't recognize Hindustani or Urdu as languages which they want to deal with. They were genuinely blind to it. I don't think they would have consciously said, I don't know. But imagine a film fraternity of, let's say, 35, 40 producers. And one of them alone is able to see that it should be Hindustani, and all the others don't look. What is this? And then there is the historian Jim Masselos, who's written on Bombay City a lot. In one of his essays, he says that if you walk around the neighborhoods of Bombay, especially the chawls and slums, what you find is that the Hindus live in vadas and wadis, and the Muslims live in bastis or mohalla, sorry. The Muslims live in mohallas, the Hindus live in vadas and wadis, and they don't have much to do with each other. The Hindu-Muslim divide has been a shadow over Hindustani. On the 15th of August 1947, and especially with the Constitution, the official language of India was pronounced as Hindi, not Hindustani. It is Hindi which was the national language of India. This lobby, the Hindi for the Hindus and Urdu for the Muslims, they had seen to it that Hindustani would not be a word in the Constitution. So Hindustani's presence continues only in cinema. If Hindustani is alive today, it is in cinema. And Ardeshir Irani is responsible for that.
Excuse me. Yeah, you spoke about Mahmood. Does he have any connection with the Mahmood studio in Bandra?
Yeah, he's the one who set it up.
Oh, I see.
This is Mehboob Khan, not Mahmood. Mehboob Khan.
Oh, I see.
That was his name. And he died before Irani. The odd thing is, Mehboob Khan died in 1964, shortly after Jawaharlal Nehru died. He was a great fan of Jawaharlal Nehru. And Ardeshir Irani died in 1969. Hi, ji.
Hello.
Hi.
So, sir, you emphasized that it was Ardeshir sir's choice of using Hindustani as a language, which is what influenced the other producers and filmmakers. So, had he chosen Marathi or Gujarati, would the Marathi film industry or the Gujarati film industry be as big as the Hindi film industry is today?
No. Because Marathi is a regional language. The whole advantage of Hindustani was that it did not belong to one region. You could show a Hindustani film in Bengal, in Madras, in Karnataka, in Jaipur, in Punjab, even in Burma, and they would understand it. Such was there's a Mughal history behind it. Hindustani has its roots in Persian.
Thank you, sir.
But it didn't have the success of Alam Ara, and certainly not the success of... and you see, there's something else, which is that in 1925, Gandhiji addressed a meeting here in Bombay declaring Hindustani as the language of the Congress national movement. He said there was this issue, the language issue, you can imagine, was terribly complicated in India. We didn't only have the present 23 languages, we had about 2,000 dialects in addition. So Hindustani seemed to be like one way out of this labyrinth. So it has bits of various languages. And in the speeches, after all, they had to give speeches. What language to give speeches in? Hindustani. Why was that possible? Because the Parsi theatre had prepared the ground. So Parsi theatre unknowingly made a huge contribution in preparing an Hindustani base. All over the country. There are Parsi plays shown in Indonesia at that time. In the 1880s and 1890s, in Malay as it was called, Burma, Indonesia, Parsi theatre went. And they were popular. Translated, not in Hindustani, but a kind of variant of Hindustani. Again, you see, because of this commonality with Persian. You have to know how widespread was the influence of Persian. There's a whole history behind that. So that advantage Marathi did not have. Marathi would be for the Konkan Maharashtra region. True. Then there's Gujarati.
I'd just like to say that this is perhaps the most delightful and interesting lecture I've heard for quite some time. And the way it was structured and the entire trajectory of this man that you traced against a socio-political background and making us live through those times. But I have a question.
Yeah.
This Ardeshir Irani, when I see all the films you spoke about, you said they were women-centered. Why do you think he made women-centered films? You said women were not even allowed to see the films. What was the reason?
You see, he had seen a lot of Hollywood films in his Alexander days. And as it happened, those were stunt films with women, a woman called Paula Negri and Pearl White and so on, who were actresses who played kind of superhero stunt heroes. He had liked those films. Moreover, he wanted to make films which are... See, other studios are making films based on Ramayana and Mahabharata. He didn't feel comfortable. In fact, it's not just him. There's Ardeshir Irani, there is JBH Wadia, and there is Sohrab Modi. It's like a little trio of Parsi filmmakers who are overlapping with each other. Ardeshir is the most senior, then comes Wadia, and then comes Sohrab Modi. None of them were comfortable with these stories like Lanka Dahan and Ram this and Krishna that. So Sohrab Modi makes one film which is called Pukar, talkie film, which is about Jahangir, the Emperor Jahangir, and how just he was. Imagine in 1939, 39 is when Pukar is released, making a film about Jahangir being the emblem of justice. When here we were, the Muslim League had separated, the RSS had also come into existence. Then then the next film that Sohrab Modi makes is Sikandar. Again, no God. See, these are films about men and women, not gods. This godly intervention was left to Ranjit Studio, Kohinoor Studio and others. Aap karo, humko nahi hota. Being Parsis, partly they couldn't quite connect anyway. So for...
A film like The Wild Cat of Bombay must have frightened the men.
I hope it did.
I would like to see it.
The film was, the title was liked so much that when the talkie era came, there was a Wild Cat of Bombay again. It was called Bombay Ki Billi. That was in 1938 or something like that. And then in 1956, another film called Bombay Ki Billi, which has nothing to do with Irani or Ruby Maharaj. People just love the title.
The cat woman which we see nowadays.
He also made Jhansi Ki Rani.
He also made Jhansi.
Modi. also made Jhansi Ki Rani.
Sora Modi, yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And no, they were nationalists. Even Sikandar is a very nationalist film. But they were not comfortable with these figures from Mahabharata and Ramayana. They were more comfortable with the Arabian Nights.
Yeah, my question was actually, you showed that photo of his music shop at Kalba Devi. Is it somewhere like where Potados would be today? It sort of
I would,
looked,
I don't know.
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is the general area. Yeah, possible. Possible.
Yes, yes.
Maybe.
And there's a shop there that's called, this shop should not have a name.
I don't know what was his shop's name.
Yeah. I
See,
just
the
wondered
problem
because
I face, one of the problems I face with the grandchildren of Ardeshir Irani is that by the time they really got to think of him, and he's already too old. So he dies in 1969. He's born in 1886. So he's in his 80s. So his 70s and 80s is when they interacted. Probably, usually you don't go out asking the grandfather, what did you do in school? Or college, you know.
Were there money spinners, these films? Did he get money?
Yes, he did. He had both Abdul Ali and he had very fancy big Cadillac cars which they would drive around in. Sorry? You see, yeah, there's a tragedy also in his life, which is a film called Kisan Kanya. Sorry. Kisan Kanya is the color film. Ardeshir did various things. He made Persian films. He made 3 Persian films, which are, and one in Tamil, one in Telugu, I think even one in Burmese or something, but the 3 Persian films, the names are known. Anyway, he made in 1937-38 a color film, the first color film ever. It is called Kisan Kanya. Essentially the story of Mother India. Mehboob Khan says that he got the idea of Mother India from Kisan Kanya. Kisan Kanya was a huge disaster. It wiped them out. The cost of, to make a color film, Ardeshir set up a color film lab of his own, thinking that he will make other color films and others. So the investment in a whole laboratory system, etc., doing the color film here, until the mid-60s, we could not make color films here. When we made color films, and Mehboob Khan made one called Aan, and one or two others, he had to go to England to make it. The laboratories and engineers here did not have the skill. Anyway, he did it, and the film was released, but the film did not do well at the box office. It did so badly that Abdul Ali's grandson said that we were literally on the streets, that the cost of paying off the debts was extreme. The Imperial's film company closed down. Jyoti Studios was born a couple of years later. They had to declare bankruptcy and various things. So Ardeshir's last phase as a filmmaker is not particularly happy. But there it is.
Sir,
yes.
Sir, thank you very much for sharing such good information, which we never knew. For the next generation, new generation, they would not know what happened, in the last 100 years back.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful to you for sharing your such vast knowledge. And I'm thankful to Mr. Tarati and Junior Mr. Tarati for bringing me here, so I could also understand the history
You're
of our
welcome.
film industry. But I would request you, sir, if it's possible, if I can, because so much of your sound was not clear. If you could share the video clip of yours with this message what you shared today, I would be much obliged, because this is part of history.
Sorry.
Okay, the recordings.
There.
There's no record.
That video.
Okay, you can share that.
There's only a
information.
PowerPoint without any sound.
It was very nice, very informative, sir. Very informative. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know how many brothers, sisters, and children he had.
I think the grandchildren, the granddaughter here would be the best. As far as I know,
Did he have anybody?
Ardeshir Irani did not have any siblings.
Nariman Irani, because he was also into films.
Nariman Irani? Did Ardeshir Irani have any siblings? No. Children, yes. That's why there are grandchildren, granddaughters.
So only one son? Only one son?
Sorry?
Only one son, one child? He had?
He had one daughter and one son.
One daughter.
The daughter was called Nargish. The son was called Shapur. Where did he live? Zaver Mahal in Chapati. Zaver Mansion, sorry, in Chapati.
And what I'd like to say, the best part of your lecture is that you carry your scholarship and research so lightly. Nothing pedantic about the story.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've got a very loud
Thank you. You can end it now. Thank you. We'll stop it. Just one that they set up in Baikala. This is in 2007. It looks desperate. As you can see, it will become the porn center, one of the pornographic film center, opposite Maharashtra College. It is now a mosque.
Please write us a book.
It's really fascinating. Yeah.
Then? Yeah, you have to write a book on all this.
I just wanted to say really thank you so much, Dr. Narendra, because I didn't give you any information. This was such a mystery. My grandfather was such a mystery, but you endured. You had the tenacity to go after it. And I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, because now his memory will live on. There'll be many more, history. The history will be there. Otherwise, it's just disappeared. There's nothing I have. My father was, they didn't really get on in between, so he didn't want to continue with that. And so there was a fire also at Jyoti Studios, and all the film was destroyed. So many things happened, and thank you. I don't know. Thank you very much for continuing this.
On behalf of Mumbai Research Center of Asia Society, Mumbai, I would like to thank, express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Narendra Panjwani for taking us through the interesting journey of interesting journey of amazing life of Mr. Ardeshir Irani. I'm sorry. Some of us, Ardeshir Irani. Some of us only know him as a maker of Alamara. Now we came to know a lot more richer contributions of Mr. Irani. Yeah, especially maker of White Cat of Bombay and Shiri Farad. Yeah, so thank you very much for also taking us to the early 20th century with the wonderful pictures of socio-economic structure of the life during that period to all of us. Thank you very much. I thank you, all the audience, for your enthusiastic participation. And I also take this opportunity to invite you all for our next event on November 11th at 5 o'clock on Bombay Booked with Mr. Uday Kulkarni. So please do join us on coming Monday. Yeah, and I also thank all the team of Asiatic Society Mumbai for their help and support. Thank you.